Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today for this session. We're going to have just about an hour together. So hopefully you've got everything you need. If you're watching it in the future, make sure you've got something comfy and something to write with. So a witch's guide to the powerful rite of menopause. I'd be really interested to know what it was that kind of drew you to this session if you're here live. So I don't know if you want to just take a minute just to drop into that theme, a witch's guide, witch and menopause. They're two quite evocative words in all kinds of ways, aren't there? I wonder if anybody felt like sharing in the chat anything about what those two words mean to you. I mean, for me, I've always loved plants. I've always loved being outside. I think I spent quite a lot of time outside by myself as a child. And that was a way that I kind of looked after myself, really. That's how I resourced myself. And also with our dog, you know. I think children find ways. So for some people it's books, isn't it? For some people it's music or art or what have you. And connection to land and creatures was something that really supported me. And then during this last 10 years, I've been in my menopause process. And yeah, I didn't realize it for many, many years, actually. It was only really in lockdown when stress levels went kind of off the scale in my family, that the symptoms really kicked off for me. But my bleed had been disrupted for 5 years previously, and I just thought, oh, it's because I had a child quite late, and my wound didn't recover, sort of thing. But as soon as lockdown hit, I realised there was something else going on, and I really, really wanted to know more about this perfectly normal and yet completely taboo feeling process. So it was kind of the two taboos for me, really. I've always been a sensitive person that's been not well received by lots of people in my life, and certainly in my early life. And so this process in menopause has been about wanting to reclaim some of that, I guess, and feel more, give myself more permission to be just who I am, where in nature I can really get a sense of that. I can just be who I am. Nobody's got a requirement of me. So Claire's saying it's about wise women for you and the healers who were persecuted. Yeah. And the wisdom of the earth. Yeah, brilliant. Also a sense of disruption and witchy disruption, Susie. I'd like to hear more about that, Susie. What is that witchy disruption for you? Yeah, I mean, in the last 2 years, I mean, I got my dad to make me a wand when I was 17. I don't know why. I just wanted one, and I didn't really know how to use it, and I just loved connecting to the plants, and I guess there was just something about the magical and the mystical that really drew me. And then the last couple of years, I've been coming across a movement of women that are kind of really looking to reclaim and honour some of the lineage of women healers, midwives, people that were different, that got persecuted through the witch trials, which, in some ways it's like, oh, there's been so much coming up in our collective that it's like, and here's another thing. But I think it's really important work, because what we know with epigenetics is how trauma is held in the body and in our DNA. And, with my work with people one-to-one, often they're working with some trauma which they feel is not just theirs. They feel it's been passed down ancestrally, and it's powerful stuff. Um, it was dangerous to be using just herbal plants, wild plants, or to have beliefs that were more animist, and kind of earth based faith or practices. And I think that's massive, and a massive part of our illness in the Western world, really. So there's kind of that anyway. But then as regards women and wombs and cycles and bleeding and not bleeding and aging, it's like there's another whole massive piece, which feels really important. I've got a few more here. Let's have a look. So Rachel, you're a garden fairy, you always love plants and gardens, and this is your passion. Interested in witchy stuff. Yes, plants run in your blood, don't they? Menopause and witches are topics that are both misunderstood and coming back into the mainstream. They really are, aren't they? Reclaiming their power. Plus, I met Hazel at a retreat. Yes, we did, and that was most wonderful. Jane, you've gone through menopause. It was difficult, yeah, physically and mentally. However, I'd like to take back some of the power I lost at that time. Brilliant. I would love to know actually at what stage of menopause people are at, whether you're approaching it, whether you're in perimenopause or you're quite far through, or whether you're on the other side, because I think it's a really interesting perspective, if people are willing to share that at all, in this session. And it's really fine if you don't want to. So yeah, it's not all about wearing kind of pointy hats, is it? And broomsticks and whatnot. Although I've heard it was a very interesting fertility practice using a witch's ointment and a broom. It was actually a psychedelic ceremony. So that's why we've got flying witches. More to learn about there. So it feels really important to me. It felt really important to me to have a meaningful process, and I really couldn't find very much out there. And then around that time, within lockdown, some books started coming out. I mean, there's kind of Women Who Run with Wolves, but also Haggitude by Sharon Blackie, and also the Red School Wise Power book. And there are others that have all been coming out at about this time. So it feels like there's a bit of a collective kind of movement. And as one of you just said, I can't remember who it was now, there's been podcasts, the BBC Witch podcast, which was really interesting. And it may not have, some people had some criticism about that, but I also think that more and more people are talking about this stuff, not only menopause, but about, what is witch? They were healers, largely, different people, intuitive people, people that had visions or inner knowings, people that were respected and sought out for counsel and medicine, or childbirth often. And there were some men, or, people who were different, maybe neurodiverse, or people that felt they didn't fit a gender, or whatever it was, that were also killed. But it was about 80% women. So, it does feel part of all that repression, really. Okay, so we've got, mixed. So 6 years for Susie, on the other side for Anne, 9 years for Rachel. Okay, brilliant. In Perry, Justine, yeah. Okay, 2003 for Anne. Yeah, Haggitude and Wise Power, they're great, aren't they? On the other side now, Dawn. And Jane, 10 years. Okay, so really mixed. Postmenopausal, started at 46 to 69. I'm glad it wasn't bad for you. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry that you had that experience, Claire. I'm very interested in the chrome archetype type 2. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So if you were willing, I'd love to just do a little grounding and for us to do a little bit of an inner journey together. So I would love it if you would be okay with leaving your cameras on. If that's really uncomfortable for you, then please do turn them off. But if you're happy, it's great for me to see you and just be able to check in with you. If you can get yourself comfy now, we're just going to go in and see what's there. Because really, all this stuff is very personal. And, you know, for me, the practice has been mainly about listening, about learning to listen on a really deep level to what needs to come through or what my body needs or what I need. So get yourself cozy, and if you can lean back into whatever's supporting you, and if you were willing to shut your eyes, that'd be great. And just see if you can give your body permission to relax, because there's nothing else to do but just be here together for about another 50 or so minutes. There's no requirement of you here, nobody needing anything from you, no responsibility. Just to be here with your body, held by this chair or stool, or whatever you're sitting in. See if you can be a bit more mindful to deepen your breath. Perhaps you might like to put your hands on your belly, on your womb or your womb space. You don't have a womb there anymore. And in your mind's eye, or however you experience imagery or knowing within you, you're going to be walking along a path. And it's a place in nature that you feel safe. And perhaps you're barefoot as you're walking along this path, but you're comfortable. Maybe you can smell the earth or the water, the plants. Perhaps you can hear some creatures rustling around as you're walking. And the sun's going down and it's dusky, that kind of tantalizing liminal space between the day and the night. And you hear some sounds in the near distance, the crackling of a fire, and laughter and chatting. And so you enter a clearing and you see a group of women sitting around a hearth fire, surrounded by the trees. And they're laughing and they're crafting, spinning or weaving, and tending to the fire. And on this fire there is a huge steaming cauldron. And the stars are shining down now, and the moon is rising. And you're being invited into the circle to come and sit with the women around this hearth, around this bubbling cauldron. And the oldest woman there is standing and she's stirring that pot. And she's looking up at you and she's smiling. She's got mischief in her eyes. And you're being welcomed back as if it's your home, as if they've been waiting for you. And you're being held by the smoke and the earth and the flickering flames. You're feeling the warmth on your body, just as humans have for thousands of years. And while you're here in this place, feeling welcomed as you are, just drop in and take a moment to watch what's arising within you. What is it you're needing from our circle today, with these women, with each other? What is it that's calling you around the words witch or menopause? And just notice that. There's no judgment. It might surprise you, and you might have known it a long time, or maybe both. You're going to write that down on a piece of parchment that the crone is passing to you. You're going to write it with a piece of charcoal. What do you need from this cooking pot of wisdom? That we're creating together with these women. And when you've finished, you're going to cast it into the pot. And it sizzles and the steam rises as each of you pops it into the pot. And the women are celebrating now. They've started singing and dancing and drumming as all these intentions or wishes or longings are put into this cauldron. And in your mind's eye, we're going to find a way of thanking these women now. You might just say a word to them in your mind, or a gesture or a bow, or put your hand on your chest. But knowing that you can come back to this circle again anytime you like. And taking an essence of that feeling with you can bring that sensation, that feeling that you've had, if you wish, in through your heart and into your belly, your womb space, or your womb, if that feels good to you. Hold this scene, these women, this fire, this magical night. We're going to take one big breath together into our bellies now. Wiggle your fingers and toes as you come back here to this space together. And your body being held by this chair in this room. And I'd like to offer you a moment to capture any of that felt meaningful in your journal. And then we're going to take a small moment with a partner to share some of that. But I'll explain more about that in a minute if you just want to have a moment to just stay with this experience and capture some of that. Thank you. Okay, lovely. So just finishing the last moments writing and having a quick swig of a drink if you want one. So we're going to offer you the opportunity to have a chat with someone else and just share some of that. If we were in a space together, we would be doing this. And I think it's a really lovely way to be heard and witnessed and to witness another. So in this space, we're not going to be jumping in unless somebody's kind of asking for some reflection. So we're going to be listening and affirming. But then at the end of your share, if you feel that you'd like some reflection from that person, then you can ask for it. So we're going to have two groups of 2 and one of 3. So I hope that's okay. I think we'll give you 9 minutes. Ali, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, brilliant. And there should be a reminder. Is that what happens, Ali?
There'll be a 60-second countdown. Is that long enough?
Yeah. Great. So if you can keep a track of your own time and yeah, when you come back, it would be lovely to hear some of what you've been sharing, either verbally or in the chat. So have a feel into that um, whilst you're working together. And if this isn't really working for the two of you, or you need to take a break, then negotiate that together. All right. So see you in 9 minutes. Enjoy. So I hope that was a nice little drop in moment. I think that's everyone. So does anyone feel that they'd like to share? Want to put your hand up?
Well, me and Claire. Oh, sorry. I'm still unmuted from when me and Claire was chatting.
Yeah.
Me and Claire had a lovely chat. Obviously, we're in a similar situation, that we've both been through it. So we are not facing the physical symptoms that anybody who's about to go through it or might be going through it right now. So we just had a good chat about how we've gone on since.
Mm. And how do these themes kind of land with you, Anne? What does it?
Well, as I say, the things that came up for me within the meditation, the three words were love, support, and friendship,
Mm.
which is what I brought to the meeting. It's what I'm taking away from the meeting, and it doesn't matter. Oh, obviously, this meeting is for a specific purpose, but these are three things that you can take to any situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because love, friendship, and support will always be appreciated.
Absolutely. The bedrock, isn't it? Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Beautiful.
I'm happy to chip in as I'm still unmuted. I can, so just echo what we were discussing. I'm going through a very big transition because I'm going to be 70 next year, and there's been for a long, long time. I've been very, very interested in the crone archetype, the wise woman. I've been present at people, friends who've been really into this kind of thing. I've been present at one of my dear friends' kind of like croning ceremony and was part of that. But I haven't experienced it for myself. So I've been for a long time, I've been really looking for a space to kind of like to go through that gateway and to kind of like really step into my eldership. So that's and also, it's also to do with the connection between sexuality, my sexuality. I've had a lot of challenges to my sex because of my breast cancer, because of the drugs I've been on. I've had a real struggle around. It's been a very painful thing,
Yeah.
and still is, and I'm working on it. I'm working on it. So and there's resistance, and I'm aware that there's resistance and fear in me, and I don't know. It's really deeply unconscious. And yeah. So that's sort of like where I am.
Sure. And it sounds really important that you know that's there and that that feels massive for me just to accept the experience, isn't it? What is
To
it,
accept experience.
the experience, the sort of moment that we're in, whatever difficult emotions are there, like
Yes. Yeah,
shame or whatever that is,
yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
when you connect to the words witch and menopause, what was it that was kind of arising in you, do you think, Claire?
Um, I'm don't connect so much with witch
Mm-hmm.
as wise woman.
Sure.
I suppose there's kind of like I used to be really into witch witch ideas, but I'm more into what. So I have a little bit of a. But so what is it okay for me to be kind of connect more with Wise Woman, or did you specifically
No,
want?
no, absolutely, because
Yeah,
what I've been reading is that actually, you know, etymology wise, which did symbolize wise woman,
yeah, yeah, yeah. They are the same. They're absolutely the same. Yeah,
something else through our condition.
yeah. I think it was a naming. It was in that medieval period. The wise women, they were called, go to the wise woman. You
Mm.
know, don't go to the witch, go to the wise woman. You know, I that's what my that's my my that's just my instinctive belief.
Oh,
So yeah, I have it as a sort of really deep earthy kind of place. This sort of I do think of woods, I do think of nature, and I do think that is that what you mean?
yes, whatever it
Yeah.
is in you.
Yeah, it's sort of deep, moist, earthy, dark, kind of like earth kind of thing, fires and all that, and burning up there. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Lovely. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else like to share anything? Yeah.
Hi, yeah,
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I had a good chat. What was interesting, I realized I knew I was doing it, but doing that journey, I realized I am fighting tooth and nail going into that crone stage, what I see as crone stage. And I was with Dawn, and she was saying she sees the crone as being free, stepping into that freedom, whereas I see it as becoming old and kind of, yeah, not a good thing, becoming old. Um, and I realised that I'm fighting. I don't want it. I want to stay young. I don't want to step into that part of my life. And I feel that I'm actually becoming more childish and more energetic as I get older, which for me maybe is a good thing. But there is a denial there. I'm seeing there's a denial there. I
And
don't know.
where do you think that comes from in you? Like, do you feel that's kind of been the way that your family did that, or is it, you know?
I think I'm very mercurial. I'm very lively. I'm very ADHD. I'm always bouncing around. I just want to carry on being like that. I like to mess. I'm always messing around and laughing, and that is just how I am. It's not an act. It's not something I put on. That is how I am.
Yeah.
And maybe it's me thinking that's going to go if I,
Uh-huh. So it's a perception. Right. Yeah. I
or
mean,
thinking.
go on.
Sorry, you were saying about, what does witch mean to me. I'm always, because of the work that I do, the shamanic work and the work, people often say, oh, you're a witch, you're a witch.
Mm.
um to me, I suppose in one way I could class myself as a witch. I don't actively work as a witch or do spells, or but I
Mhm.
do healings for people, help people heal themselves. I shouldn't say I do it. I allow people to connect so they can heal themselves.
Mhm.
It's an interesting one. It's made me have a look. So it has made me look at
Mm.
quite a few things.
Mm.
But I don't want to be a crone. I think maybe it's the word, the
Yeah.
moles, the whiskers on the chin. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally get that. And I feel that within me as well. And I think for me, there's a great deal of pressure in our society with this kind of like youthful, obsessive kind of we
Absolutely.
and I'm really drawn to older people that still are really youthful, that are still doing their thing, and have a twinkle in their eye of mischief and playfulness.
Yeah.
You know, I just
That's me. That's
There you go. So like, how can we embody who we are and take it into being elders, wise older women, crones. I mean, I think the word crone, unfortunately, like many of the sacred feminine words, has been, you know,
yes, it's been misused.
used and made into something really negative and I mean, useless and old and can't do anything and
Yeah.
losing marbles and all that stuff. But then when I witness people that are really engaging in their eldership, uh,
Mm.
and not letting those conditioned ideas hold them back. I hear them saying things like, I'm doing my best work ever. I'm most myself than I've ever been.
Yeah.
Most productive that I've ever been. But really, really listening to what is possible, because energy's different. And there's something for me in menopause around just not really giving a crap what other people think of us so much, you know?
I think there's vanity in it as well. I'll be honest, there is vanity. Somebody said to me on Saturday, "Oh, are you still working?" And I thought, "You cheeky bastard." So there's vanity. Wow, I'll be honest. How dare you say that I look too old to be working? You know, that sort of thing.
No, I totally get it. And we live in an ageist society, don't we?
Yeah.
I think there is something for me around us doing enough of our own work that we can just let those things duck off a, what's it called, water off a duck's back, you know, because people are going to say those things. They don't even
And
doing it.
I think there's something I'll throw this into the mix as well. And this is something that I'm quite happy with, quite content with.
Yeah.
And I've told my family as well, I'm not going to become old and infirm and be sitting in an old people's home with a nappy on while somebody croons Elvis Presley songs to me in the day room. I will take myself off. And that's not me being, oh God, I'm suicidal. I'm not at all. I've made that decision. So I'm not going to go there. So, I mean, to some people that might sound shocking, but to me, it's like something that I don't want to do.
You're right. You feel the way you feel.
Yeah.
And my hope for you, Jane, would be that you can be the elder that you want to be.
Yeah.
Full stop. You know, there's no like, you have to be this. You can be Jane.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any last?
Well, I got the words I had were resistance, tribe, and pleasure. And I think it's interesting that, you know, Claire talked about resistance. Jane's talking about denial. There is that sort of sense of pushing against the, you know, the sort of tide of what people are telling you and how you have to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
A strong feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always a good feeling, the resistance part, but sometimes it feels great and sometimes it feels, you know, angry. There's a lot of anger.
Yeah, and
I think it's important to bring anger in here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of hurt, and it's still going on, isn't it?
Yeah. I really feel it rising up in this at this point in life. But then there's a lot out there. It's that sort of thing of, you know, is this me or is this, you know, the sort of interior, exterior? But actually, we're conditioned to sort of try and separate and compartmentalize things. But actually, it's everything. You know, we're in this swirl.
Yeah, totally. No, I really feel that too, and I really feel it in myself. Susie, remind me where you are with your menopause.
So I probably, I don't know, sort of 7 or 8 years in. So, you know, quite far in.
Yeah. So do you have your bleed at all anymore?
No, that was 6-7 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Sorry, muted myself by mistake then. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was some of the symptoms, actually. So because, you know, working with people mainly one-to-one I'm doing at the moment, but women that, you know, come, they don't even know that they're in menopause. The doctors, if they've been to see the doctors may be given them antidepressants or that sort of thing. But a lot of people will feel very anxious, grief and anger and just like confusion, kind of discombobulation, which I love as a word. Fatigue, want to be alone, aches and pains, mind fog, flushes, just not feeling yourself. Dryness in the skin and your vagina, flooding, serious bleeding where you feel like you can't leave the house, and more than one bleed in a month cycle. And I know many of you have kind of moved beyond that, but I think for some people, when it starts with the anxiety and the grief and the anger and just not being able to do what they normally would do and just not feeling themselves, people have literally said to me, I feel like I'm going mad. I just don't know who I am anymore. And it kind of breaks my heart because we're just so under supported. I had children and I felt the same when I was pregnant. I didn't know. I didn't know how awful some of those experiences were going to be. And I think it's the same with menopause. And I just think it's so rubbish that we don't even know. But it feels like a whisper at first. And then I think when some of these symptoms kick off, and not everybody has them, and not everybody has, you might have something different, or you might have a bit of this and a bit of that. But it does feel, for me, how I've been trying to contain it, or the lens I've been looking through for myself, is that I'm getting an upgrade. I'm getting a soul upgrade. And what it feels, I put this on a social media post the other day, it feels like Samhain or All Hallows Eve. It feels like any emotions that have been shoved down, pushed down, shoved in a box, behind a wall, whatever people have done with it, is starting to loosen. It's starting to come up. There isn't the same amount of capacity without the estrogen and the progesterone and even some of the testosterone to be able to have the defenses that we would normally have. You know how, like, when you're ill or you're tired or you're hungry, you get much more triggered because your capacity's down. Well, I think menopause is like that, and it's like a prolonged premenstrual because hormones are strong. So what could a powerful, witchy menopause look like? And this is basically the journey that I've been on for the last, over 10 years, but basically the last 5 years has been the biggest part for me. I think the main thing has been having kindness and more acceptance of myself. Like, I think if there's one thing that could be a takeaway, it would be that. Because I think when we are hard on ourselves, which often we are, it just makes everything so much worse. So, for me, that practice of daily kindness to myself helps me cope so much better in the world. A deeper sense of knowing and listening. I think, Claire, you were talking about, you have a strong sense of a feeling, but then you don't really know what it is. And I totally get that. And I think we all have that. I think if we have some form of daily practice, whatever works for you, for some people it's walking, for some people it's meditating, for some people it's sewing, just to connect more deeply to your inner world without so much noise. There's so much on the exterior, there's so much information we're bombarded with all the time. Just to have some quiet, contemplative space. Some people are really in tune with their kind of extrasensory perceptions. There's this whole mystical piece. I've worked in the NHS for 6 years, and I've also got my private work, but in the NHS, I meet people from all walks of life, probably people that wouldn't look at a directory and think, oh, I'll go to Hazel. But they end up talking to me about things that are like clairvoyance, things that they see or they know, or I heard this voice and I just knew blah, 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 blah. I believe this is innately part of being human. And I think some people perhaps have more of a connection to their extrasensory knowing, either clairvoyance, which is seeing pictures in your head, or sometimes people even see, external things, spirits or other things. Sentience, which is clairsentience, which is a deep feeling. Clairaudience, which is the which is the hearing, and claircognizance, which is the inner knowing. I think all humans have that. And for me, in menopause, it's an opportunity to really deepen into that and to listen. And now I don't have a bleed cycle, because I think, through Red School or another sort of cycle aware kind of practice, you can really work with your menstrual bleed in a kind of a deep listening kind of, where am I on day one, where am I on day two kind of. But now I use the moon. So the moon is my anchor. The moon keeps me on track. And every morning I will write my diary. And sometimes I'll write a bit in the evening. What is arising in me? Where is my heart today? What am I feeling in my gut today? What do I need? Do I need to go slow? Do I need to just try and turn it down a bit? Do I need to move my body? And so, as I've said on some of the reels on social media, it's not like I feel like I'm done, I'm sorted. I mean, I haven't bled now for, 3 years in total, although I had a little blip. So I don't know whether you start again, but it wasn't anything nasty, which is good. I think it was probably just a random egg. But, for me, this practice, I've got my tools. I know that spending some time in nature is going to help me. If I can do that, I will. I know that listening to some people's voices on podcasts is going to calm me down and help me feel nourished, So I think it's just about developing your tools that you can do at home, at the bus stop, in Tesco's, on your holiday, and then pull them out as needed. For some people, there's catharsis in ritual. I mean, I think, to be honest, if I'm being honest, I think human beings evolved with ritual, and I think it can be, whether you have any form of spiritual or religious belief or not, it can be a really cathartic way of letting go of some stuff. Prayers and offerings, again, it doesn't have to be religious, but just kind of naming and for yourself. And a lot of indigenous practices around gratitude and respect, working with plant spirit medicine, or a more animist way of connection with nature. All these kind of daily practices are the things that help me. And I guess, when I think of the word witch, what I'm really feeling is into a kind of a more soulful, connective and nature connective way of being, in the mystery of the world, whatever those things are, and foraging for me has been a huge thing. So connecting to some of our plants that literally grow in the hedgerow that help menopause. I think I've been much healthier in my whole being since I've been working with wild food as kind of medicine and food. And I've also been, teaching myself to craft with wild fibres. There's a longing in me to know, what is my indigenous culture, What are my ways of connecting in the way that our human beings have for thousands of years, really, thousands and thousands of years. And it feels very, very grounding and very supportive. So a little forage at the moment, which you may or may not be up for, but is the yew tree berry. Now, the yew tree is in many ways is viewed as very poisonous, and it is, the bark, the leaves, and the seed of the yew. But the actual yew berries, I don't know if any of you have eaten the very red berry of the yew tree. You can suck off the fruit, the flesh part, and it's absolutely delicious, and it's very, very full of vitamin C. So that's a little fun forage at the moment. But but also the yew tree, you know, it lives for a really long time. And that's why you see a lot of yew trees in churches, because they were sacred to Celtic and pagan people, which you may also know. And what happens is they the center of the tree, the heartwood may rot out, but all the external part of the tree stays alive and carries on sprouting. So in Sussex, where I used to live, there is an old yew grove which only has 12 trees remaining now, but they are supposed to be about a couple of thousand years old. And you know, when the branch touches the ground, a bit like willow, it will start growing. And yeah, they're estimated at being really incredibly old. So we think that to Celtic and pagan folk, it was a strong kind of symbol around death and rebirth, of course, which feels very linked to menopause for me, because it does feel like we're stepping over into a whole new lease of life. And there's even a book called the Second Spring, and you know, people talk about it as almost like a second puberty, because I mean, my daughter is also in her teens, and so we've been doing this crazy crossover where she's been getting her cycles as I've been losing mine, and the similarities in our symptoms have been just mind-boggling, really. So it does feel that with her hormones coming in and being fluctuating, mine going out and fluctuating, it feels like there's really something in that. So yeah, that's kind of how it's been for me. And we haven't got time to do this journal exercise now, but I wonder whether I could offer this to you, which perhaps you might like to do in your own time, to just further connect to these words, witch and menopause, and reflect on, you know, maybe focus on one. And if witch doesn't fit for you, whatever that means for you, it doesn't have to be that word. For me, what it means is something about this sacred, older version of being a woman. But equally, any conditioning around what witch might mean for you. So any fears, any longings, any powerful knowing within yourself. And then do the same for this word menopause. Because for me, there's kind of how I feel inside, and then there's how society often makes me feel, you know. So thank you so much for coming today. We have run over a little bit, but I kind of knew that we would. I wonder if you could just take a minute. I've just put a I'd like to do one more thing with you to close, but I've just put a very brief document in the chat. And if you're watching this later, I'm going to be emailing this out with the recording. But I would love it if you could either, well, maybe we should do it afterwards, actually. If you can give me any feedback on what you think, well, what this is kind of brought up in you, and if there's more that you feel you'd like to explore and what that might look like, because I would love to develop more of this work, and I really want to hear what people want. So there's a link there, and I'll also be emailing that out. So let's take a last moment together. I think let's not do that for now. Let's just take a last moment together, because a few people have gone off. So I think we have, because we've run over a bit, let's just take this last little moment. And I just, maybe you want to put a hand on your heart, hand on your belly, and just let all these themes land for you. Anything you're taking with you today, or anything it sparked within you. And knowing that you can go back to that circle and visit the women in the clearing with the cauldron anytime you wish. And then coming back here now, coming back to be together, and we'll just say goodbye. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, it's been so lovely to have you here. Thank you for coming. And it's been lovely to meet you. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for coming.